It's true. It's so crazy. Like, it almost feels like when you get out of something like that, it almost feels like you were brainwashed in a way. Like, you have no idea who the hell you even were.
Wow.
And you step out of it in a new light. And in that time of my life, I always kept things a secret because I didn't want that person to get in trouble. I didn't want, I blamed myself for those things happening to me, even though it was not my fault.
Oh,
So there was a lot to it. It's so complicated.
no.
So it's not just the abuse; it's everything else that comes with it.
Welcome to another episode of Kaizen Cast. Small steps, big changes. Today's guest is a friend, actually a new friend, Emily Quinn, who came into our life, my wife and I's life, just about 2 weeks ago, which is crazy. We were actually headed to a breakfast place called Atria, which was actually closed, and we were really crunched for time. And we headed to another place that we like called. She actually is a waitress there and a hostess, and we started talking, and we were talking about how I hadn't drank in, it'll be 5 years, and she's like, "Oh my God, I haven't drank in almost 3 years." One thing led to another. She's from the Northeast, and our lives got brought together basically from God, and I'm very blessed, and thank you, Lord, for doing this. Because Emily is somebody that's very, very special and is really, really in the upswing of her life at a very, very young age, unlike myself, where it took me 52 years to actually get my shit together. She's doing it at a very, very young age, which I'm very proud to have her in our life. So let me introduce Emily. Emily, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yay! Thank you so much.
Yeah,
That was
God
so
bless you.
sweet.
Of course, it's the truth. When you speak, I say this all the time. When you speak from the heart, it's easy to talk to people. It's simple, and I just want everybody, if you could, if you could give us a little background on yourself, where you came from. I know it's the New England area, but how your life started and kind of where we are today, and then we'll just go from there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's definitely been a journey. It's for
Yeah.
sure. It's been so. I think I've been in Florida now for 6 years, and just recently I was trying to post on Facebook how long it had been since we had quit drinking, and I made a mistake. I thought it had only been 2 Thanksgivings. It's been three, so I already forgot.
Congratulations.
I'm like
Yeah.
it's the longer it goes on, the easier it gets for some
Absolutely.
people. And yeah, it's been three. That's our third Thanksgiving. So.
Yeah, you and your boyfriend, by the way. Her boyfriend also is a bartender. It's funny. I realize this too. Like the more people that Lori and I meet, and we sit at the bar to still eat. There's a lot of bartenders that bartend that are not drinkers anymore, which is crazy, but it's pretty cool because they don't have to white knuckle anything, and and they get through it, which is great. Yeah, that's congratulations.
Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
it shows really like a lot of self control to be able to bartend and be around it constantly and smell it.
Strength.
It's so gross now. Like
Yeah.
the longer you go without drinking, it's like it smells so bad.
I know. Well, as we always say, now in this new world that we live in of sobriety, it's literally poison that we're putting into our bodies. And if you think about when you're a little kid and the first time that your uncle or your aunt or your mother or your father, like, oh, try a little wine, and then you take the sip and you make that face, it's because your body knows it's not good for you.
Yeah.
Or a little sip of vodka or whatever it may have been, you cringe. And then what do we say as we get older? Because we try to trick ourselves and say, oh, no, it's an acquired taste. No, it's still poison.
It is,
Yeah.
but somehow it does start to taste better, It's like, it's so weird.
Yeah.
But it's so nasty. It really is. I actually had somebody say a few years ago that I met at a kava bar, they were saying that alcohol is called spirits for a reason.
Truth.
And I was like, wow, like that's crazy. I never thought of it that way, because it's like the fact that it's called spirits, they were saying, is because it brings out things in people and it brings out demons. And I was like, what? Is that really why they called it that?
And I bet that is true.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting fact because it brings out a lot of ugly.
Both of us know. I know. Especially for me, I've made a lot of horrible decisions after multiple hours of drinking, and you make really really bad decisions. And those spirits slash demons, because that's what I think they are. They're part of the devil. They bring the worst in you. They bring out the worst.
They do, and it's been so. I know back when I was 21, I'm 34 now, so. When I was about 21, that's kind of when I really got into heavily drinking.
Tell everybody where you're from if you don't mind.
Yeah, New Hampshire. Yay. Yeah, New Englanders.
Yeah.
So I love that we have that in common. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I swear, New England people stick together.
Absolutely.
It's fun. It's cool that we got to meet, and being up north too in the winter time. So even here, it's a little chilly now in Florida, but being up there in the cold, I mean, it was more of an excuse to just stay home and drink in the wintertime because it was cold, you didn't want to drive, there was nothing else to do up there, so it made it easier to just get in that habit. And then I think when I was 21 is when I really started, I was in a relationship with someone who kind of, you know, obviously you make your own decisions in life, but at the time, like, I was convinced that it was okay to start drinking every day. And I remember, like, my gut instinct was like, this isn't healthy, this isn't right. But I was being told that if it becomes a problem, then that's when you quit.
Right.
And, you know, a few years go by of drinking every day in my early 20s, like when I really should have been doing other things, you know, with my life. The people I was around stopped drinking every day, but I didn't.
Yeah. And
eventually I kind of slowed down on it where it wasn't as much. I wasn't doing, you know, 10 shots of Captain Morgan every single night.
Right.
It went down to like 1 or 2, you know, and then eventually I did quit for a little while. But during that time, a lot of bad things happened. And it wasn't just because of my own drinking. It was because of the relationship that I was in and their drinking habits. And it's really no excuse.
I have a question for you. Not to cut you off, because I think about this a lot. Did you meet your ex at a party, or did you meet at a function where drinking had started and that's how you guys met? So you guys already had drinks in you, or was it before that?
It was actually before that. So it was while I was in high school. Okay. So it was before I ever had started drinking.
Was he drinking in high school?
As far as I know, I don't think so.
Right.
But, you know, that was something in the 20s, like, that we kind of started heavily getting into together. And, you know, a lot of bad stuff just happened. And that's around the same time that a lot of the abuse had happened. And, you know, you really can't use alcohol as an excuse.
Yeah, but I'm sorry to hear that.
But, well, thank you. Yeah, so it takes a lot to heal from that kind of stuff and to move on from it, and you have to find your self-worth again.
Yeah. Was it physical or mental? Or
physical and mental, for sure. So
sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. It's been a long time since then. But unfortunately, it did affect me in a lot of negative ways. It affected my future drinking habits, my future relationships. So it definitely wasn't, the best time in my life. And it was waves. You know, it's interesting when you're in an abusive relationship, how it can go in waves, how things get better and then things get worse and then things get better.
It's funny that you bring that up, because I always used to think about this, and for people like that are in relationships like that, like, how come they don't leave earlier? But you nailed it. So it's not always horrific like that, and then they realize, oh, it's getting a little bit better, let me hang on, and then it goes back to the shitty relationship, and then you go on these like roller coaster rides, huh?
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of women, or sometimes men, I mean, it happens to men too, and they're in these relationships and then they just can't get out of them.
It's true. It's so crazy. Like, it almost feels like when you get out of something like that, it almost feels like you were brainwashed in a way. Like, you have no idea who the hell you even were.
Wow.
And you step out of it in a new light. And in that time of my life, I always kept things a secret because I didn't want that person to get in trouble. I didn't want, I blamed myself for those things happening to me, even though it was not my fault. So there was a lot to it, you know. It's so complicated. No. So it's not just the abuse; it's everything else that comes with it.
And then there's embarrassment, and then and you don't want people knowing your business, and you're like, and this isn't even like good business. This is terrible business, and it's just like it snowballs.
It is, and then I have learned something recently. What do they call that? Where it's like love bombing. Where, you know, sometimes they'll treat you a lot better after something bad like that happens to try to
because they feel so guilty too.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I always questioned if that person ever did feel bad, because they never really showed that.
Right.
But they would be very apologetic afterwards, and there was just so much bad stuff that happened in that time where I should have left. I never did. Sometimes I still wonder why I never did.
But you did. You did.
I did. Yeah. I did eventually, yeah. And
how many years were you in that?
13 years, unfortunately. Yeah, so it was a long time coming, because a lot of that stuff had happened, you know, maybe three years plus, by the time I finally got out of that relationship. And it was actually because they cheated on me. So I found out through that. So, you know, getting out of something like that, you realize, like, why was that what it took to get out of such an unhealthy relationship? Why was it that I waited until someone cheated on me when I had been physically and verbally abused throughout the years? Yeah. So it's interesting. It's still a journey for me, honestly. I really think that normalizing therapy should be huge.
Stuff like this is so important.
It is.
I never hit a woman, but I know that I verbally abused my ex-wife, like, because sometimes I was enraged with the alcohol and I just wasn't in a great place. So I do share that too. When I feel horrible about all that. It's not what men are supposed to do. It's not what women are supposed to do to men. If you truly respect each other and love each other, number one, you tell the truth all the time. And you were probably not in a truthful relationship right from the get-go. There was probably a lot of hiding and lying, and
it's so unhealthy.
It's so unhealthy.
And then if you add alcohol into the mix, it just makes things even worse.
It's way worse.
Yeah, it does. And it causes so many more problems. And once I got out of that.
You think that's why the divorce rate's probably almost 60-something%? I mean, think about everybody's drinking levels. Like,
yeah, I know.
I mean, you're in the industry. You see it. I mean,
it's so normalized.
Day in, day out. I call it the socially acceptable way to live, right? Because, again, when the government gets paid, which since Prohibition, alcohol's been legal.
Yeah.
Now look at it. Same thing with gambling. Gambling's not legal. You don't have to. I'm much older than you, so like in the old days, you had to call a bookmaker, which was the guy who took your bets, and then you actually paid him on Mondays or Fridays, whatever the payday was, or they paid you. Now young kids can go on their phone and go on DraftKings and Penn Gaming, and they can put their own bets in, but the government's getting paid because they can see it all. They get taxed. They don't go after the bookmakers anymore because there's no free cash anywhere, because now they can see it all. So then what's the next thing that happened? You have alcohol, you have gambling, and now marijuana.
And they're mixed in too.
And they all intertwine.
They do. You go to a casino.
Go to a bar. Go to a restaurant/bar on a weekend. What's on? College football. Yeah. College or pro football on Sundays, and with alcohol, and who's not hitting the vape pen, that's got weed in it, and then all of a sudden now you're mixing all three, and you think you can actually make a great, clear, educated decision? Absolutely not.
It's true, yeah.
That's why I think the divorce rate is through the roof. I mean, I'm not saying that you couldn't have that happen to people that don't drink and don't, but like, I see where my life is today, and like, I can put my head on the pillow every single night and know that I did the best I could today. I may not be the best husband or the best dad perfect every day, but I'm trying to get better each day. And when you have the alcohol in you, and there's always a little bit of like deceit, there's lie, there's this, it never works.
No, it's true. And honestly, for me personally, like my medical marijuana actually helped me, and it doesn't work for everybody, but it helped me quit drinking. because once you get to the point where you are drinking every day, it's so hard to quit. And it personally helped me a lot. It is not for everybody,
Sure.
but that's like a tool that I use, and I don't even smoke every day.
Which is incredible because we have, I know we have addictive personality. So I did the same thing, by the way.
Oh, really?
I did. I quit drinking. I went to medical marijuana, but I abused the shit out of that. I abused everything that I possibly could. So, you know, the gummies, the 10 milligram gummies.
Yeah.
Then I found Rick Simpson oil, the black like tarry oil that goes.
Oh, yes, RSO.
Yeah, RSO, right? Rick Simpson oil is super high potent and it can really fuck you up.
Yes.
I would take it and put it on top of the gummies and then squish them together like an Oreo and take like 3 gummies.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
That's so much.
That's so much.
Yeah, that's
But
so
that's
much,
me.
yeah.
So that's when I realized, my wife was like, okay, you're waking up the next morning with anxiety because too much THC causes that. And everything I do is over the top and aggressive. So I had to pull that out of my life. But you're blessed where you were able just to use it to get by. Like, you know, for me, like, you know, I told you about the opioid story. So that was 8 straight years. And to quit that cold turkey, I lived in hell for 5 straight weeks.
Scary. That's scary. And like honestly, it's so dangerous to do that. So
Yeah.
you are definitely lucky.
Blessed. You know, I think that's one of the reasons why I have this podcast is because truly the Lord wants me to be able to talk to people about this because there's so many people out there, young, old, in between, that are hurting and they just don't know how to talk about it, or they don't have somebody to talk about it, or they're embarrassed. Like what you were going through with your relationship. I hid from everybody. You think I was ever on social media? I was Wall Street 25 years. You think I was ever on social media? And I was never on any of those things.
It'd be scary to be in the public eye like that. And drinking and like using substances is a way to kind of just bury your emotions. And that's not something I really realized till years after. You know, I was so happy when I moved to Florida. And then, of course, it's Florida. So you're like, you go to the bars, you're going to the beach and getting a drink on the beach. And it's like, you know, you're feeling good. And then you realize after it starts becoming a bad habit again, you start drinking more and more. COVID just made it easier and more normalized to just drink.
We talked about that. Think about that. So what happened when COVID hit, right? What closed? Bars, churches and gyms. What stayed open? Liquor stores.
Yep.
How is that possible?
They did.
And our drinking, everybody's drinking. I was in Puerto Rico at the time, but then I actually realized, and I was still drinking at the time. And I realized, I was like, this is interesting. You can go to the liquor store, they want you to, and everybody's drinking it. Oh, I would be on the phone when they were doing the party phone thing or whatever that thing was called, where you could talk to everybody because nobody could, I forget what it was, house party or whatever it was called.
There was an app.
Yeah, it was an app. And and all of a sudden everybody's drinking. It went from like, okay, it's 4:00, work's kind of over. Then it was, 2:30. Then all of a sudden people were drinking at 11 o'clock in the morning. And that was all okay. But if you went to try to go to a gym, they were like, you need a mask, you can't come in. What?
And I tried. Me and my boyfriend Chase, he had got me into the gym, and I had never gone to the gym before. And when we started going, it was around COVID time. I was gaining weight. I was, unhappy, but the drinking, of course, was adding to that. But trying to work out with the mask on, I get heart palpitations. And so when I was wearing the face mask, it was making it harder to breathe, and I actually started getting heart palpitations.
Interesting that they never spoke about that either. Like how young kids were trying to run track with a mask on, and then they were dropping dead or passing out from it. I mean, the things that they put us through, it was unbelievable. I actually still, and now, as we go forward 4 or 5 years later, we're starting to learn that all that stuff none of that was good.
I know, and it's so crazy that it's 2024, it was 2020. It wasn't even that long ago, but we just all get back to our normal lives and then we forget about it.
Forget about it. Well, I say this all the time. That's why it's very easy for media to manipulate people, because they can't remember what they did yesterday. So they don't remember the fact that somebody did something 2 years ago or 4 years ago. and then they just spin it in their heads like, oh, well, that was fine. Nobody, you know, we all got through it. No, you got through it. You're lucky you're still alive. I'm lucky I'm still alive. But there's a lot of people that got injured from the shot. There's a lot of people that got injured from drinking too much. There's a lot of bad things happened in that time frame.
Oh, yes.
That was life changing.
It was. And then once the bars opened back up, at the time when I was still drinking, that was like, it was, yeah.
It was like heaven.
It was, but it was bad. It was bad because that's when, like, you know, you would drink way more because you're able to go out and then things were happening.
Yes.
And it was like, it was just dangerous. And yeah, talk to people. So you'd be drinking more because you weren't really paying attention to how much you would drink. And all of a sudden, before you know it, you don't remember how you got home.
Right.
You know, so.
And you gain 25 pounds. Everybody's wondering where, like, because, you know, this is the other thing. It was okay to DoorDash, Uber Eats. Everybody was sitting on their ass watching Netflix, drinking, and DoorDash and Uber eating, and we were all just gaining weight. And that's the difference with me. Like, when Lori came into my life, that's when I quit drinking in 2020.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, crazy.
Good
March
for you,
7th,
yeah.
March 7th, I was in Puerto Rico, and I'll never forget this because I used to take my laptop and go over to the Vanderbilt Hotel, and that's, you know, I trade equities, so I'd open that up, and I'd sit at the bar, and I'd overlook the ocean, and they'd start pouring me vodka at 12 o'clock, right? So, and I was a straight vodka drinker at that point, and I remember the guy's name, Pablo. He said, Mr. Del Vecchio, I won't see you for 2 weeks. And I was like, why not? He's like, because there's this COVID virus coming out. And I'm like, or, you know, we have to, you know, get into our houses. And I'm like, what? I didn't even know what it was, right? I was like, whatever. I was like, this is ridiculous. I got blackout drunk. I remember that day. And I walked because I didn't have a car. So thank God so I got myself back to my apartment, or I Ubered, and I woke up the next morning going, yeah, this is not vodka. I can't do this anymore because this is not working out right because I'm gonna die.
Wow.
And yeah, so the vodka drinking stopped March 7th, 2020, and then
that's right when it started. That's right when it started. Wow.
Yes, that was exactly when it started. That's when everybody went bananas. And then I drank red wine for like 2 months because I was back and forth between here and Puerto Rico. And then after that, my wife was like, and she was still drinking at the time, and she was like, I'm done. Because she had major anxiety in the morning, like from the drink. What do they call that? The
anxiety.
The anxiety, yeah. And so what do? You have another drink, and you're like, oh, it cures it.
It does. I mean, it was instant, you know, because you wake up with the anxiety from being hungover and drinking too much, and it's just proven. It just happens, especially if you already have severe anxiety, and then it's like an instant relief.
It's instant.
So it's almost like a form of self-medication.
And she had that, and she was like, I can't do this anymore because I'm killing myself. She's like, and she said this to me. She's also a psych major, so it actually, she likes this kind of stuff. So she implants shit into my head, and then it lets me make my own decisions about it, even though she's really telling me what I need to do. She was like, I'm done drinking. She's like, you've never put me in harm's way with your drinking, but you know you drink a lot. And you're not drinking vodka anymore, but you're going to gain more weight, and then you're going to get heavy, and you're going to get upset. And because I was at almost 300 pounds at one point, and then I lost 50 pounds, and then I lost another 50 when I got here. And she was just like, you're going to be unhappy with yourself. But again, you can do what you want to do. You do you, I'm going to do me. And I was like, okay. So that lasted for about a week. And I'm like, you know what? Why am I doing this? She's not drinking. I'm going to sit here and drink red wine, and then whatever, I'm going to snore at night. Like, why am I doing this? So I said, you know what, babe, I'm just going to stop for a month. So 1 month led to 2 months to 3 months, and here we are. We're almost on 5 years. Wow. And it was the best decision that I ever made. Well, I got it implanted in my brain that it was the best decision I ever made, but she stuck it in there. But she hasn't had a drink, and you know what? And it just makes life a lot clearer.
Yeah, it does. And that's really great of her to like give that decision to you and not force you to do it and give you that ultimatum.
That's the big, you just nailed it.
Yeah.
That's the big thing.
That's
when
awesome.
I'm not good with people giving me directions and jamming them down my throat. That's why I didn't do well with COVID, with people mask on, mask off. Like, I don't do well with any of that shit. Take the shot. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
Let me make my own decision.
No kidding, right?
Yeah, like, this is not your choice. Like, my body, my choice. Like, that whole thing went around. But when it was time for the shot, they were forcing people to do it, or you got to lose your job.
Yeah, or you couldn't travel, or you couldn't stay
travel.
certain
What?
places,
Get out
and
of here.
yeah.
Stop.
It was
That's nuts.
insane. I'm so glad we're out of that. It was
Me too.
madness.
But it's crazy that you went through that period of time, and you actually can see it now that the drinking went through the roof.
It did, and just nothing good comes of it. And honestly, maybe if it weren't for COVID, I never would have, So,
Truth.
and the fact that my boyfriend and I did it together was super awesome. So
Yeah,
we had each other.
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's not easy to do, but it's also not easy. Back in the day, I used to smoke cigarettes, and I lived in a house with other people who smoked, and it's really hard to quit. But at one point, I did that for myself. I quit. Even living with other people who were smoking. And before I got out of that abusive relationship, moved to Florida, it was there. Yeah. So knowing that I could do that, honestly, was like, alcohol wasn't super hard. I'm very lucky I'm very lucky. It was more a mindset thing. Because I was probably very close to being physically addicted to it, but I was able to do it where I did not need to go and have withdrawals. I'm curious too, with the opiates for you.
Super
Why did you decide to do it without any help? Was there a reason?
I was hiding. I didn't want anybody to know. My ex-wife didn't know. I had 3 kids with my ex-wife, and my whole goal was to make sure nobody knew. Again, that's that whole thing of when you're in a relationship, there's the lies and there's stuff that goes on. But in an abusive relationship, same thing. Like, I didn't want anybody knowing my business because I was doing bad shit. Yeah. I was killing myself. So I was like, all right, this is the only way you're going to handle it. You're going to do it yourself. You're going to quit, and you're going to deal with the pain that's coming. And I've told myself that the day I quit in Miami. I was in South Beach at Ultra. Sitting on the balcony, and my dad passed in March 1st on my birthday in 2008. And I remember just looking up to God and looking at him, and I'm like, all right, my next step is heroin, and I'm never going to see my kids again. That one was real. Yeah. That one actually, that's when I was like, okay, you put yourself in, and my dad used to say, you make your bed, you lie in it, right? So like, I was like, I'm going to lie in this fucking bed, but it's going to be painful. So the next 5 weeks, I just went through hell.
Wow. Yeah, that gives me chills.
Yeah.
I have goosebumps, literally.
Yeah. And I did. And I got through it. But my drinking got heavier because it was a way to self-medicate myself again, because I still wasn't in a happy place. But I had to quit something else. See, I couldn't quit everything because I think I really would have died. Like, I needed that next vice to like get me to where I was, and then I needed to stop that vice of drinking to, just like I said, I went through the progress of every possible thing. You went from opioids to drinking, to stop drinking, then the marijuana, stop that, and now I have nothing, which is this is the best life I've ever. And I wish that I never drank in high school, never did a drug.
I didn't either. I also wasn't allowed to. I would have never got away with it.
No. My parents would have known too. And I'm the baby of the family, so like anything my older brothers did, they already knew, and I'm like 10 years younger than my oldest brother, so like they were on top of all that. But as soon as I went to college, that's when my drinking started, and it ruined my baseball career, and that was one of the main reasons why I was so angry. And I guess I didn't realize I was hurting myself and killing myself because I have an addictive personality. Anything I put my mind to, I will get done. I promise you, good or bad, and I've done both.
It's crazy how functional you can be too while you're actively using or an active alcoholic. It's crazy. I mean, I started my whole business and I started going to school all while driving an hour and a half one way to work. I did all of that for myself, but all while still drinking very heavily. And it wasn't every day at that point. I went through waves of where I'd be like, okay, this is know. And then eventually it just kept coming back to where I got back in that place again. So I just knew it doesn't work for me. I can't just have one. I got to get drunk every time.
Yeah, I know. And it's amazing to me that I think those are the one percenters, the people like myself that are able, like in yourself, to be able to quit. We're in the 1% and be like, there's a lot of people that white knuckle that too, and it's hard for them. But when we put our mind to it, we're done. But there's also those people that put their mind to it and say, okay, I'm gonna only have one glass of wine and then I'm good. I think that's amazing because I've never had one glass of anything. Like if we're gonna go drink, we're drinking.
Me either, yeah. It
we're
was
drinking.
always to get drunk. I mean, that was the thing. It was so normalized up north too. It was like
Yeah.
on weekends you'd hang out with all your friends. What were you doing? You were getting drunk. That's
Right.
what you were doing. You weren't just having a drink or two and hanging out. You were getting drunk.
Right.
That was the whole point.
And it didn't matter if you were an athlete, a worker for the town, or a CEO of a company. That's what it was. Like it really was like that.